Zambia has been ranked among the top 10 African countries that is expected to record one of the fastest growing economies in the year 2025. Now, this is according to the latest World Economic Outlook report by the International Monetary Fund, IMF. This report projects a 6.6 GDP growth rate for Zambia, placing the country sixth on the continent. Now, according to the IMF, this growth will be driven by the easing of adverse weather impacts and improved supply of conditions. On paper, this appears to sound very promising for a turnaround, but beneath these statistics and headlines lies deeper question. Who is benefiting from this growth? Is it translating into tangible economic improvements for the lives of the ordinary Zambians? This is the subject of discussion this evening. I introduce my guest right after this. Thank you so much for joining me on Costa this evening. Remember, we're live on DSTV's channel 271. We're on GoTV channel 20. Via Facebook, it's Diamond TV Online, as well as Diamond Media Zambia. On YouTube, we're on Diamond TV Zambia. My guest, Mr. Watson Lumba. He refers to himself as the street economist. He's my guest on Costa with me, Costa. The street economist, it's a pleasure to host you and welcome to this interview.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your program.
Great. I think let's begin with an overall assessment of, obviously, government, scribes from the business circles. I've heard Matthew Winkler from Bloomberg more recently, the IMF reports, and just various, business, publications talking about this great economic performance by the Zambian economy. But let's find out what really is the vibe on the street. Is this translated? Are the people on the street who you say you represent as a street economist feeling this growth?
Well, first, let's start, if you allow me. When people are saying economic growth, what do we mean? And the reason I call myself a street economist is to explain what are these economic jargon. When you say economic growth, what are you looking at? What is the impact, like you have rightly said in your preamble question? I think when we're talking about economic growth is based on the gross domestic production. What is that? Is the goods we are producing and the services. The services includes like teachers. How many teachers are producing their services? How many doctors are producing their services? How many accountants are producing their services? Those are service industries. Then we look at production. When we say, let's talk about what we know in Zambia mostly, agriculture and mining. Now, if we say there's growth, number one, are we seeing growth in services? Are there more doctors opening up clinics and they are having clients? Are there more accountants opening up their own tuntembas and having clients? Are there more teachers being employed maybe or opening up their own schools? Then we go to the farmers. Do we have more farmers who have grown more than they did last time? Do we have people who are welding on the market? Or people are making furniture in some streets, maybe in Mandevu. Do we have more who have increased? Are they selling those things and they're feeling the impact? What about the economic push, like where I'm coming from, petroleum? The prices of petroleum have come down. Do we see more buses moving? Do we see more people now traveling? Increasing. There is this things making up economic growth, the movement of goods. Are there more people now growing more than we had last year? Do we have more mines producing more than they did? There are two things in mining. There is those mines which are already there producing more, but on the other side, there is also new mines coming up. Are we seeing those things coming up? When you aggregate all these things, you start talking about economic growth and you start projecting, overlooking at these things.
So let's take it from your answer there, because yours is to break down the technical economic jargon into simple street language. So if you describe the gross domestic product as basically the production, or the summation of the production of goods and services, and you raise these questions, so I'll ask you the same question that you raised, because certainly you're here to answer these questions. Has there been growth in the production in the agriculture sector? Is there growth in mining? Is there growth in manufacturing? But ultimately, for a person on the street, it must translate into the pot. Am I able to have 3 meals in a day?
Yeah.
Am I able to afford healthcare that you talk about? Yeah. It may be that doctors are opening twin timbers, but can I afford the medical care? Yeah. Am I able to have disposable income, or really afford the basic needs basket? So those questions you pose, again, let's run through them. Have we seen an increment in production in these various sectors?
I think it's a very good question you ask, and that's the question we need to answer. And one of the things economists do is to compare from one place to another, or from one year to another year. So we are coming from a year when we had a drought. So obviously our growth was not as we expected.
It was actually minus from our projection.
Then, yeah,
we had to minus our forecast.
Then we had energy, electricity. I know of a company, they've got a small milling plant, and they couldn't produce. They went into contract with ZNS to produce egos. ZNS could give them maize, but they had no ZESCO. So they could have this power and powers of maize, but they can't produce, and those workers were not being paid. So that's the situation we are coming of. If we talk about where we're coming from. So there are those who are not getting paid because there's no electricity. On one of the programs here, Diamond Live, we were seated here and talking about economic issues, and on the TV here in the studio, there was a bakery just before I came in. They said, look, we are closing because we don't have electricity. We've got the flour, we've got the personnel, but we don't have energy. We are closing. So it meant those people who were working for that bakery, they will have no income. They will not feel it in their pocket positively. They will feel it negatively. Now, if we do fast forward, why they're saying there will be this growth? Number one, by the grace of God, we had good rainfall. Almost everyone produced. And we have seen without the intervention of government, the prices of milling meal have started coming down. And I know for the fact ZNS has reduced production. They are trying to relook at their pricing, because some millers have started selling their milling meal lower than the Eagles price. So in that, you can see that those who were queuing up to get a ZNS bag of milling meal, they can just go into ShopRite and buy, let me not mention a company's name.
And then when you look at that particular scenario, the real picture is not that the Eagles milling meal was cheap, in that it was being produced cheaply. It was being subsidized one way or the other. So for those that have had the market forces that you talk about, if there's surplus or the millers are doing it, unless we say it's a cartel, is this price reduction market driven?
Yes, this market is market driven because government has not intervened. The statutory bodies, like maybe who are responsible for that, they have not intervened. So this is where people have grown more than they had, and then you may, if you like, the way they say that briefcase buyers, they go in quickly and they buy that maize at cheaper price. because now they have a lot. They can just walk in there, they find the maize. So they start selling to millers at a lower price. So now we talk about economics here, the laws of supply and demand. Because now the supply is more like becoming outstripping the demand. What does it do? It forces the prices to come down. And people now with maize, they will be forced not to sell even at the FRA price, because no one is going to buy apart from FRA. And FRA may just buy so much. And those who remain, if they are going to have something, they have to sell at a lower price.
As we speak, the FRA board did announce, obviously, what their projection in terms of buying will be. The question always, Mr. Lumba, arises, what type of strategic planners or thinkers we are as a country? Do we only project to look at maize to supply for meal? Because I think the consumption for maize in Zambia is not even over 1.6 million metric tons. If you calculate what we need for meal consumption, feed, what we're supplying to the breweries and so on.
Yeah.
We are talking a projected bumper harvest of just now over 2 million. Others are saying under 3 million, metric tons.
Yeah.
What I'm driving at, if FRA mops up, if the local millers mop up, what do we do with the excess? Because last time there was a debacle or a debate as to whether the government was reckless by selling excess maize, and then we were hit with a drought and we had to start importing from Tanzania, who we had sold to.
Yeah.
How should we take and approach this?
So that's why now it has to be vice versa. There must be a deliberate policy to allow people to export. If FRA can get what they need as a strategic reserve, FRA is supposed to be the last resort to keep strategic reserve. When there's nothing, in the time of drought, FRA should come on the market and produce what they have been keeping for us. If that they buy all they want, all their silos or storerooms, by silos I mean storerooms for my friends on the street who may not hear what our silos are. It's where they store the maize. If all those are full from FRA buying, and we still have maize, and all the millers buy what they need, and we still have maize, it's at that point government should open the other markets. Which is the other markets? The export markets, surrounding areas. We have a big market in Congo. I don't think there's a bumper harvest in Congo.
Unfortunately, we've always, in time immemorial or historically, failed to formalize trade between Zambia and Congo. Whether maize or meal is always smuggled.
I think if we are being fair to this government, or at least from what I hear, there was a time even the president said Congo had paid in advance for maize here. I'm just saying there is some willingness with this government, from what we read and what is announced, to allow exports. So, but we have to do it in a proper way where we can account for it. So now I'm told the Ministry of Agriculture must supposed to give you a license to allow you to export either meal or maize. But also there is this drive where the president would say, let's not export maize, let's export meal by adding value. By adding value, it means we are creating employment. There were those people who were engaged in farming, that was employment. If we end at that and export, we have not employed another person. If we take it to a miller, it means we have employed another person in the milling who will get paid. The one who grew was paid. The one who is milling is paid. And then they export and they get a little bit more than they are getting. And if they're exporting to a place like Congo, they may get paid in dollars. I was privileged early this year to go to Lubumbashi, and I was surprised to go to the ATM. I pushed in my ATM card. What came out were dollars. Of course, it was at a cost. But all I'm saying, there are dollars in Congo. And so if we increase the number of people who are exporting, it means we're going to have more dollars coming into the country, and it means the kwacha dollar exchange will start coming down because there will be more supply of dollars than the demand. And so we'll start seeing the
exchange rate firming.
Yes.
I will be coming to that because, again, there are so many arguments around the issue of the exchange rate, what's triggering it and why, what does it translate to. But let's still stick on the issue of the growth in agriculture production, and you talk about maize. You touched earlier that the price of a bag of mini meal has started coming down. For example, from private millers, you expect the same to start happening with Eagle's Meal Mill. Not to be political, but for the person on the street, again, they react on the sentiments of political promises. I think at one point, the administration promised that the bag of mini meal, having hit over 200 before they took power, was too expensive. And when they come in, we should be, all things being equal, be able to buy a 25 kg at 50 kwacha. You say the prices have started coming down. Is the current price of around 213 kwacha a good enough price to say low and an affordable price for Zambians? Do you expect it to come low?
Well, from where I'm seated, I expect the price to come lower than what it is now because there is a lot of maize going there. I know of people who have gone, I've got relatives in the rural areas who have gone further than where they stay to buy maize, and they're saying, oh, it's costing so much. They start encouraging friends. So one would expect from the forces of supply and demand, the price of mealie meal will still come down because FRI hasn't even gone on the market. I don't know if they have started buying. Maybe they have. They have announced. So, but of course, we can't expect it to come as low as we would want to be because in the production of maize, it's not only the raw material itself. There is also the engine and the power to propel that engine, which is energy. Now, where we're coming from, we have a challenge. I told you earlier on, Mr. Mwansa, that I know of a milling plant which had to close because of ZESCO. They depend on ZESCO. And ZESCO power they could receive, I was told, at 3 a.m. in the morning. Who will come for work? And one of the things they started doing was to make the workers sleep at the premises so that immediately there's power, they wake up. And then the power was only for 3 to 5 hours. So that reduces demand. Now, whilst on the other hand, we have the raw material of maize. On the other hand, we don't have much energy. And until now, I'm coming from a petroleum sector, the price of diesel was very high. So not many could afford running small milling plants. They will not get a premium or a profit if they went that way. So now, as we start the price of diesel coming down, so one may be tempted to go through that. And we already now have, there's an addition through the solar plant, which was, what do you call it, opened by the president, which was commissioned, that's the word, by the president. Now, it means during the day, we are going to have a little bit more power. So if that power could be also be distributed in Lusaka, you're going to notice that those with small milling plants can benefit during the hours of the day. Their workers can work.
But obviously that Chisamba plant is just 100 megawatts that cannot suffer. And we're told already that there's already PPAs with big, mines like FQM to take up on such of those power projects.
I think you know better that FQM, they haven't been getting power from ZESCO. During those times of lot of load shedding, they were importing their own power. So they were not depending on the grid, because if they really did, they couldn't have done the production. So some of the big powers, they are producing their own. We know that Dangote produces their own power at the plant. We know that part of the new Mulungushi textiles coming up within their matrix of setting up the product, there is the power where they are going to be producing themselves. So these big companies, they may have their own sources of power, which means they are going to leave the main grid maybe to small people on the street, those who are welding, those who are doing barber shops, those who are doing carpentry on the street, to start maybe accessing power during the day when they can do that.
But before we get to talk energy, let's finalize on this issue of maize and agriculture production. You've made it extremely clear that the raw material in maize itself is not really the determinant or the cost driver of the price of milling meal as an end product. Millers will also complain about the fact that production of maize is highly capital intensive for a farmer because fertilizers as well. Yes, there was imports of basil dressing, but now it's being produced locally. But you still have to import urea and other things. So fertilizer is one of them. But even the yield per hectare is something for maize that is quite cost intensive. The access to markets in terms of transportation, you mentioned energy as well.
Yeah.
How do we then look at these variables in relation to the cost coming down?
I'm glad you are asking those kind of questions because there are so many variables, unlike us looking just at the maize. One of the things you have said rightly is the road. Those roads going to where maybe we are collecting maize or where these things is at. And what state are the roads in? That's a cost. And so we have to see that certain things are public interests where government goes in. You don't expect somebody from the private to start doing those feeder roads. So government has to do those feeder roads. And one of the things we can give credit to this government is this purchase of road equipment, which we have seen. Surely if this those councils in the rural areas and they have bought graders and other road equipment stuff, this is the time when we have to see those graders doing their work in their respective rural areas. I heard the president again one day on TV saying, within the CDF funding, there is a factor for diesel to use that equipment which has been bought. So everything remaining equal, one would see that there is a positive, I'm not saying an excellent, but a positive movement from where we are coming from, where all those variables are being touched to say that we make a movement. There should be a start.
But there's also been still a big, question. For the majority of peasant farmers, many of them have been on a government support program through the fertilizer input support FISP, then more into the e-voucher, receiving of free, seed and free fertilizer, irregardless of the amount.
Yeah.
And then I think there was also an incentive extended to millers to purchase maize at a subsidized price from FRA. But still, we see that year in, year out, this does not trigger or translate into benefits to the end user. Has the FISP program failed us? Or failed its intention?
I think, Mr. Mwansa, or if you don't mind, look, if you've traveled in the rural areas during the time of President Levi Mwanawasa, I tend to think it worked out that time. I would go in rural areas. That time I used to frequent a rural area, had interest in a constituency, and you could see people have bought canters. For the first time, I started seeing even small vehicles in rural areas. You could go at a town center of a rural area. There are a lot of taxis there. So there was a movement whereby these factors were worked on. And I tend to think this is the movement we are seeing now, where now it's just trying to clean it up. We're coming from, it's not a blame game, but economists, we have to compare where we're coming from. Where it was more about where you belong. You don't belong, you don't get anything. So now I'm a small peasant farmer in my own small way. And we couldn't get maize. Even now, I've never gotten maize. I do think because there's a clique of people who do that. But we need to start cleaning up. And the question also which is there, it's not a critique to the government. Are the people getting maize really the real farmers? Because I know in an area where I am, colleagues tell me, oh, the time maize is delivered, oh, you don't need to go and buy from the shop. You can buy from Mr. So-and-so. They got this maize from government. Maize is being given sometimes to people who are not even producing. Now, if they gave a guy like me, at least I've got so many hectares of land, and they will not give me enough maize and fertilizer to do that. Year in and year out, I have to buy at a small scale. Of course, I'm not a big farmer, at a small scale. And there are many colleagues like me who are doing that, who don't get the maize. And you see that the structure of the where we belong to, the cooperative, where we belong to, there's already the chairman, they've already chosen themselves. And when these things are given, it's that committee which gives to the people and their friends.
Does a small-scale farmer at your level have the access to sell when you produce at your own private cost to sell to FRA and make a breakthrough, a profit to return your costs?
Yeah, I think now it is. I remember when I started at one point, you may laugh at my production. I had an acre, that was my first time, if you allow me to give an example. And that year we had the army worms, and you are fighting army worms. I just did an acre, and I didn't do very well. Now, in an acre, the price of 50 kg bag, which government gave, was 60 kwacha. And then after all that fighting, spending so much, I only got 15 bags from an acre, which I did. And out of those 15 bags, I spent 3,000 kwacha fighting army worms. Now, if I was
going... Before we even calculate the bags of fertilizer and the labor.
Yes. Now, if I was to sell the 15 bags at 60 kwacha, I was going to get 900 kwacha out of just 3,000 of a part of it. Now, we don't have army worms now. We try to do this. This year it was nice. We were just lazy in our management. But the best thing of it all is the price. In the past, we were subsidizing consumption. Now, when you subsidize consumption, you are punishing production. Production becomes expensive. Like imagine I spend 3,000 plus all that, and then I go and sell a bag of maize at 60 kwacha. But now, what is happening is like the last 2 years, it's like a farmer is encouraged to grow more. Because if it was that time, and I come and sell a bag today, my 15 bags at 300 kwacha, I could have gotten 4,500 after I'd spent
But the 3,000 you talk about probably is to fight army worms. You still have other costs. Are you still breaking through with the cost of the basal fertilizer, the top dressing, the urea and so on, the cost of labor?
So the point is, my margin of loss could have reduced at that point. Now, with no fighting army worms and fertilizer being available, of course, it's expensive if we go and buy outside. But the point is, when I go and sell, I may, if I have a good yield, I may make a good margin of profit. And like then, when it was the price of mealie meal was cheaper, and the price of maize was lower.
This administration also, whether we look at the development plans, whether it's the 6th, now we're on the 8th, as a country we've been preaching diversification, even in our agriculture, that we should not just be practicing maize. At one point, 2-3 years ago, I think we saw a switch which affected maize, that people went into soya beans because the price was attractive. Yeah. Last year, there was a complaint that FRA didn't even offer they changed their mind, or they rescinded the decision to come back into soya. So there's a bit of this instability in terms of today we plant maize, there's drought, or they don't buy, or the price is not attractive. We go to soy, it's attractive. How do we manage this issue of cash crops and balancing crop diversification as a country? Should we be maize-centric?
So that's another question you have asked. It's a big challenge because you see, we are moved by cash as a farmers. We depend on that now, and we are more Nshima driven. So if I eat rice for supper, I haven't eaten, I would want to eat Nshima. And so everyone gets by, again, it's supply and demand. Where is more demand? If I look at soybeans and maize, psychologically, how we think on the street, why should I grow soybeans and what is the yield? If I don't sell soybeans, will I have Nshima? The first thing I would say, oh, maybe I can have Nshima. Out of this 1 year I'm going to eat. I'll sort out the problem of my Nshima. So there is this psychological thing in our mind that it's Nshima, Nshima, Nshima. When you have good places where we can grow rice, good places where we can grow soybeans and sunflower. In my farming, in my small farming, I need soybeans, I need sunflower, I need maize, because that tells you that I'm a livestock farmer. I need those things. But when people are more going into maize, like the way it is now, everyone was excited about maize because we are coming from a drought.
So it's a demand problem.
So now we've got a demand problem. Now, again, we say, if FRA could also encourage maize, soybeans, sunflower, because you see, the way we do in the villages, we get, like say sunflower, somebody grows the sunflower, they come to us, we give them cooking oil, and their payment is the sunflower cake. They feel they can do better to go and sell the pressed oil, the cooking oil, which has come from sunflower. They feel there is more market for them and not in the cake. I'm more interested in the cake. So we are more like doing a barter system. It works well for me. I'm not going to get money out.
Finally, on this issue of maize and this cycle that you as a farmer are diversifying, you're talking about the soya cake and all these things. The byproducts of this maize, apart from mealie meal, is things like, feed for the chickens, feed for the animals. And when you look at when people say the cost of living is high, it's one thing to say, yes, we are doing well, that the bag of mealie meal is coming down. But if chicken is still expensive, if beef is still expensive, then the equation for me is as good as zero.
Well, yes, you may say that. But when we are getting this thing, we need to start somewhere. Like I say, when you are a chicken farmer, like if you're doing layers or broilers, you find that because more people have grown maize, those things will automatically start coming down because there will be more people.
But we haven't seen that, unfortunately, for feed.
Well, first, we haven't seen it, and we are in the early stages of harvest and selling, though most of the people have gone. But definitely, there will be a marginal decrease. I have seen a marginal decrease in what we are doing in a small way. There's a marginal decrease in the maize brand. There's a marginal decrease in number 3 meal, which we use. There's a marginal decrease in the sunflower cake, depending on where you buy it from. So the other thing we're supposed to promote is basically those rural centers where I've got this thing, to buy from there. Last year or 2 years ago, we were buying our soya cake from Eastern Province, from ladies who would go there. And it was still cheaper after they have traveled there and pay transport, a truck, and they bring it into Lusaka than going to these sellers in Lusaka. I can't mention names of those who are, it's like I'm campaigning, not advertising them well. But you see, it was easier for us, it was cheaper for us to get, like my colleagues maybe who I represent, they can agree with me. It was cheaper to ask somebody in Eastern Province with a good truck and a good quantity on the economies of scale. It was better to get maize or maize products from Eastern Province.
For the sake of time, we've broken down the GDP from an agriculture perspective, but let's look at other economic factors or variables. Among the, Zambia's economy being one of the best performing, even Zambia's currency has been tipped to be one of the best performing, if not in Africa. We are now seeing a dollar that was almost kissing 30, coming down. As of this morning, we're talking around 22 in certain banks, 23. Again, from simple street economics, what firms when we say the kwacha has appreciated is if we are selling so much more than we're importing. How is this economics working when we are still in a trade deficit? We are still as a country importing more than we export. Nothing for me when you look at the numbers in terms of whether copper production, we are still swimming below 700,000 metric tons. When you couple all that, there's nothing even when you look at the non-traditional exports. Others will argue that it's actually the mess that the Trump administration is making on the global scene with the tariff wars and the war it's putting itself into. It's more the dollar weakening than the kwacha appreciating.
Yeah, it's a good question again. I'm happy you're asking those kind of questions. That's what we need to answer. Number one, we have to save. The traditional way of us earning dollars, having dollars, was to export copper. Now, where we are coming from, copper mines were being shut down. We can talk about shaft number 28, the famous shaft number 28. Before 2021, FQM were thinking of packing their bags. We messed up the KCM, we messed up Mopani, and we didn't have all these other mines coming up. Let's not talk politics there. Let's just put the way things are. Now, we need copper. We need copper for the foreseeable future. When I was in grade 1, I don't know, we knew copper was a diminishing asset. Even now, we know it's diminishing assets. But we have to increase other areas. That's not what you have asked me. So we're talking about the dollar. We earn more dollars when we export copper. So that means we need to have more copper mines than few. We shouldn't be closing copper mines. To the contrary, we should be supporting anyone mining. And that's why you see people going into this gold rush and we're having debts. Now, those people should be organized into a proper way and given.
So you're talking about that in the immediate term. I think the question to ask it directly is that there is nothing that this economy is doing in terms of exporting more and earning dollars to say the kwacha has strengthened. It's actually that the dollar has dropped. The dollar has disappreciated. It has weakened.
I think you know better than me, and you are the ones who produce the news. From your news, whether maybe it's ZNBC or yours, the two I listen to, yours and ZNBC, the others maybe come at a time when it's not convenient to me, we've said it has been reported in the recent past. All the mines, like KCM, they were not online. They have produced from zero to start exporting. So that's a plus. And not only are they exporting, they have increased the production. That's what we are reading. They are increasing the production. FQM have increased production. The other mine, which we've talked about, KCM, and even Mopani, they reported an increase in copper production. I think if we're being fair, let's say there has been an increase in copper production, and everyone is getting excited. Oh, we are moving towards the 1 million mark this year.
So you're attributing increased copper production to this strengthening of the currency?
Well, one way is to say, look, it's only that. It's not only that. The other thing we have not done, we are doing, which has happened, is also how our exports are going. Are we buying, the imports? Are we going to pay dollars to get maize in? No. No one is planning to do that. No one is gathering up dollars, going on the market that they go and buy maize from Tanzania or from Zimbabwe. So everyone is looking for kwacha to go and buy maize so that they can say, those who keep dollars, and they have to see the opportunity.
Others would also argue that it's just basically that the fact that there's low supply of the dollar in the market, that there's no liquidity of dollar. But moving further into this exchange rate, the biggest worry for businesses alike, and you're an economist, is that you must be able to plan and to focus as a business. I think the worrying thing, and I'll bring in fuel now, is that the exchange rate has been, you as economists say, yo-yoing. It has been fluctuating, and as net importers, it's very difficult to plan. And so even if it comes from 28 to 23, businesses are not excited because they're not sure whether it will still go up tomorrow or not. Hence, the benefits are not passed on to the end user because you're still watching, waiting, and seeing.
Yeah.
The same even with our fuel. We've been told we need to review every month because ERB has told us we have no control over two things, the exchange rate and the cost of crude internationally.
Yeah.
So how do you plan with a fluctuating petrol price and a fluctuating currency? To summarize, the question is, how sustainable are these drops or these gains with the kwacha appreciating, the petrol price coming down? How sustainable?
Well, look, we can say if you want to paint a red picture, you say they are not sustainable. It's difficult to plan. But also, when you are looking at a macro, not a micro, macro, by macro I mean a larger picture, you say, we are coming from a highly indebted country. So let's face that. We owe a lot. We owe more than we earn. We brought ourselves into this after we had been forgiven, after we won HIPIC with the late President Lev Mwanawasa and Minister Magande. So you see, we're coming from that. And we won so much credit rating that we abused it ourselves. Forget about blaming, but that's what we went through. And when we earned that money, we didn't put it in income-generating production. Most of that money went into politics, where there were more by-election, where we're coming from. Every other month, there was a by-election. And those by-elections were very costly. The other day, I was reading, or is it on social media, where...
Which is still the case. We still have what others may term unnecessary by-elections even now.
Yeah. So there are
and we're spending money when we are going to Parliament to ask for more money, and yet we're having by-elections.
But we are not having expensive by-election than the way we used to have, where there's cadarism, there is flashing of money. I don't think there is I've never been into an area where there's a by-election in the recent past. I can't say.
But it's still a cost. It's
a cost, but the level at which it's going, we need to start reducing that. Let's get back to the issue of all this earning. Because we are not earning, when we were doing very well, we became reckless. We have to agree that where could we have put our money? At that point, we could have put money into energy production.
But coming back to my question, I think that is the historical mistake, granted. The issue now is the kwacha, we say, has appreciated against the dollar from 28 to averagely 23 or 24.
Yeah.
And the cost of petrol now has come down, not significantly, but it has come down. For a person in business wanting to plan and focus, how sustainable? And why isn't this benefit being passed on to the end user? I heard the Minister of Commerce the other day pleading. I thought this should be automatic.
Well, look, first, let's not talk about the past. Let's talk at the present. That's your question.
Yeah, how sustainable is it?
Well, look, in every economy, the sustainability of your currency should be backed up with production. And we have to go. I've answered this question several times. How do we sustain ourselves? It's production. We have to increase our production and give more incentive to production. If, of course, we don't produce fuel, one of the things we don't do. So we have to take where do we have a competitive advantage? Where do we have an advantage to do more and earn more of what we don't have? We have got the agriculture. We need to have good policies to sustain that around agriculture. We have to have good policies around mining so that we have more people going into mining. We have to have good policies in those things which the non-traditional exports, those things we have not been exporting, but we have them in Zambia.
So in short, as it stands, we cannot control the fluctuation of the exchange rate. Or we do not have enough production capacity to keep the kwacha where it is, even to send it further, probably down to say 20 or 90.
No. What we're saying is what is driving immediately government starts intervening into those things. It's a recipe of poverty where you start controlling. When you leave it to market forces like the way we've seen now, what happened with, let's talk about petroleum. What happened with diesel is opening up the pipeline where people have to bid to use the pipeline. And that started bringing the price of diesel down.
I'm happy you mentioned that. Again, it's not a culmination that it's first of all, the policy or the intent may have been good, but here is an irregularity, and people are saying the cost of diesel should have actually come down months before, not until the whistle was blown from the aspects of the IMF and the US Embassy that this opening of the access, there was monopoly of people who are close to the powers that be that were closing or crowding everybody else out onto this Tazama pipeline when diesel must have been cheap. You're from the sector. What do you comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, if there were very few players, the pipeline wasn't open. That's the truth.
Yeah, but when it was opened, there was still monopoly by a few, and this is why the IMF and others had to raise red flags to say, why are only a few participating and inflating the price?
No, I think I need to control that because I'm coming from Indeni, and we participated in that. The thing was, if you look at the pricing, there was the issue of also the pricing. At that point, there was now this war in where sanctions were getting under Russia. And the production, the cost, when you look at the cost, it was not just the dollar. The cost on the oil market, on the petroleum market, international petroleum market, was very high. That we can't deny, coming from India. But I'm not ruling out what you're saying. Yes, there was this intervention. Now there's the intervention. The government listened, which is good, even for us. As Indeni, we sell to, we are in agreement with one of the big mines to supply them diesel. We are getting a benefit of what is happening because now we can get fuel, diesel, with an agreed price with the mines. We find that our margin locked in there, because we are getting it at a lower price. It's better. We can say all that is a problem. How can we sustain that?
So you can agree that the previous contract with one of the suppliers or the bidders, which we saw again through the ministry rectifying, and this story was big, I'm sure you're aware, you can say that that contract was in bad faith, even if we had given an open access to the Tazama line?
Well, look, the fact that where there's no competition, the private sector should have competition. Now, with a reason I don't know, there was that. We can't deny that. And there's no need of defending the things you cannot defend. But what you can talk about, are we still there? So sometimes, as Zambians, we have to learn to give credit where it's due. Yes, it was bad. I'm not Bemba, but I know reading into Bemba politicians, they say something like a Chombush, Monsholo or something, whatever, where this government, what they've done is to listen and to do. That's what we need.
Coming from the petroleum sector, there was an announcement more recently, and the president this week spoke about it at the investment, Indaba, that Tanzania, China, and Zambia have recently signed an agreement to look at remodeling, or basically just refurbishing or bringing back to life certain aspects of Tazama. You are sitting on the board of Indeni. Again, there were so many issues surrounding Indeni at one point. Its job was to play the refractory part when we import crude and then distribute the diesel and all that. How would you say this plays into how Indeni will work? And just basically an update on the status of what role going into the future will assets like Indeni play? And again, for the consumer or the viewer, the end game is the pump price.
First, let's make one thing clear here. Indeni has never been a refinery. I think that's very clear. Indeni has always been a separator. By that we mean finished diesel, finished petrol, finished jet fuel, finished kerosene. They are put together and pumped into the pipeline. And then when they get to Indeni, Indeni separates them back to their original status, for the lack of a better term. So that was the role of Indeni. Now, to buy that commingled stuff was expensive. But then also, the problem is you buy from traders who have bought from others and bringing it to the market. So there was, like, if you like, middlemen between the refinery and us buying the commingled stuff. There were traders here who can sell you that. Now, what has happened, fast forward? If I talk about Indeni, we are buying fuel from a refinery. We are in a contract with ADNOC of Abu Dhabi. That's where we're getting fuel now. We're already talking
Is it still commingled stuff?
No, it's finished product. No one is, because Indeni now is, Indeni, those storage tanks we have, they're stocking, those ones we are using, they're stocking finished diesel. So we are buying from ADNOC at a price which is negotiated, not a commingled stuff price or from a trader, because the trader will buy from ADNOC, put their markup, and then it comes to us.
And now, how is it transported?
Now it's transported by ship to Tanzania, and to Tanzania we use the pipeline.
Which is Tazama.
Which is Tazama. But we have to push in a bid, even as Indeni, as a public company, state-owned. We are not favored. We have to go and bid. So we negotiate a price with ADNOC. We see the price they're giving us. And then we push in our bid based on that price. And then so far we have won access to the pipeline 3 times. First, this time around, we didn't win. We're a little bit higher than other colleagues. That's the beauty of private sector and competition. So the pipeline is used based on the price you are putting there. And my hope, and which also could be your hope, that this continues. We don't go back to those, because there is benefit.
So the opening of the pipeline can, in a way, guarantee that as long as there are a number of players that can negotiate the import of the product cheaper and use the pipeline to deliver to the service stations, we can manage the cost of diesel, at least. Diesel.
Oh, we can manage to some extent, because, you know, that's not the only major cost which is there. There are the shippers there. Also, we have to pay for that. We have to pay for road transport. So, but the major bulk of it, yes, we can say we can manage. And if Indeni was given more access to it, we have the largest tankerage in Zambia than any other company. And our cry at Indeni is, can we be given more access despite our price? It's a good price, but can we have more access to the pipeline as a national company? Why are we crying for that? Because we have got storage. If we are given, because like now, they choose 3. Now, if you choose 3, each cargo can only bring in 105 metric tons of the cargo cubes, 105, and then there are
That's
3
cubic
of
liters.
yeah. Then there are 3 of us. There is maybe company they choose 3, so the 3 of us we are going to share that 105. So it means Indeni is just getting 35 out of that. So now we have tankerage which can keep all that on our own. But our tanks, you find they're empty. And then they give to people who don't have tankerage. But it's business, it's an open access. They have pushed in their bid.
Still back to the issue of this performing economy and the GDP forecast at 6.6%. On one hand, the question is this translating tangibly to the cost of living reduced? On the other, apart from formal employment in the civil service and others, this economy is largely driven by private sector, SMEs and so on. But the cost of doing business, Mr. Street Economist, in this country is so high. So how do we promise to grow an economy when the private sector cannot borrow at affordable interest rates? So you're averaging 28 to 33%. Even when NAPSA, I saw the other day, signing for SMEs a $70 million in partnership with the Swedes, and we are not told about the mechanics, but the cost of borrowing is high. The Bank of Zambia announces every quarter the monetary policy rate and all these things, too high. Taxes are one of the highest within the region. We look at corporate and income tax, and even now the scheme of doing business, before you even bid, you need to have a tax clearance, you need to be compliant on NAPSA and this whole government system. How do you grow this economy and project this when the cost and environment of doing business is high and hostile for the small scale, for the SME?
Yeah, in the meantime, let's face the fact that things are supposed to be well. Why? Because we don't have money. So how do we get out of the poverty? If we remain on handouts, we are not going to get out of poverty. We need to produce ourselves. If I'm going to rent to keep my family based on my neighbor's goodwill, one day my neighbor will find another place, then will not have, or they'll just stop. So how do we need to develop self-reliance. Every one of us should be involved in one of production or another.
Yeah, but the question, Mr. Lumba, is how then can we produce if the cost of production is high? I've just spoken about borrowing. I am a small business person myself. If I want to buy an extra camera or build a bigger studio, I can't borrow because the cost of borrowing is too high. Secondly, you spoke about the energy crisis. Apart from not getting power for the full 24 hours, we understand there's a drought, there's an emergency tariff plan that has come in. That's an extra cost. Alternative energy is an extra cost. So I also call myself a very simple street economist. I would have looked at it this way, that if you give the small businesses an incentive, an avenue, or a stimulus plan to borrow at a cheaper price, they will create jobs, they will pay taxes, that still plows back into a growing economy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on what you just have said. If prices are lower, the borrowing is lower, then you see that many people can borrow. Our economy, like you rightly said, and I agree with you, is driven by small-scale, medium industries or businesses. Now, to grow this economy, we have to do things. Like I said, where do we have a competitive advantage? We need to invest where it matters first. And that's copper. Make our laws proper. Make agriculture. And this government, just things I've seen on TV and social media. I've never gone there as a farmer and say, let me get. Other people were getting tractors. They were. I tried to apply to Citizen Economic Empowerment. A friend of mine applied there. They got a tractor, and I went there. I tried. I didn't get it. But some get. Now, it's those small initiatives which are starting, if they can grow. Now, how does that initiative grow? Is to look at where are we strong. I mean, from time immemorial, we have been strong in copper, and there's a demand for copper, and we need to open more mines. We need to produce more copper. We need to make going into mining easier.
But what about other services? And again, we talk about local content. Yes, again, we've got Barrick, we've got FQM, and all these guys pumping in billions of dollars into reopening, or you've got Mingomba and Cobalt. But what about the local content production value chain? Are the Zambians, these local SMEs, participating in the value chain of other services in the mines?
Well, one would say, from a standpoint, you say they are participating because they are contractors. Government has agreed with these mines that there should be a big portion.
Who are not being paid?
I don't think so now. I think if we are being fair with the status, Mr. Mwansa, you realize that some mines have made a tremendous effort to pay contractors. If you go on the copper belt, Kitwe is bursting. Kitwe is so much activity.
I don't know which Kitwe then you went to.
The Kitwe I went to school at Impelembe. I mean, you can see that. Look,
you've been there recently?
Yeah, I've been there to Kitwe recently. I mean, let's be fair to the efforts being made. We are not where we were. At least we are moving. Can we push the train a little bit faster? That's what we should be doing. Is the train moving? Yes, it is moving. Is it going to Lusaka where we are going? Yes, it's going to Lusaka. It's not going to Solwezi.
Is there a way that more incentives can be given to the local SMEs? Because surely, if we're squeezing them from emergency tariffs on the cost of power, the cost of borrowing is high, the taxman is on their door, what can be done for them to incentivize? Because again, there's this cry that when a foreign investor who has cheaper capital comes in, they're given some sort of tax incentives. What is there for the local investor?
First, you and I agree that if we talk about mining, it's very expensive. No one in Zambia has got that kind of money to say, I can invest $1 billion to start a business. No one. So we need to find the JVs. What do we come to a JV? We come with land to the JV, and somebody brings in money. We need to start participating in these mines. And those are the things we are supposed, government should start addressing. We don't have the money, but we've got the land, we've got the copper. How do we participate? Let's not our people start buying by going into this illegal mining, and we are having so many deaths of our youths. So government should start, and I'm sure they are doing, policies to protect those areas and say, how do we do it? The point I'm saying, what you're saying is true, but the train is moving. The train is moving. Let's hope we've started from Kitwe. At least we have passed Ndola. We are somewhere between Ndola and Kapiri. Let's not say we are not moving. We are moving. Is it the right direction? Yes. Are we borrowing? Yes, we are borrowing. We can't say we are not borrowing. To what extent? Where are we borrowing? Who am I borrowing? I can borrow from you as friends. You just say, no, 5% will be okay for my kwacha, not 25%. I mean, something like that. Now, we have to borrow. We don't have money. But where are we borrowing? But we have to start reducing our borrowing and produce more, and hence bringing in people with money, like the endeavor you talked about of trying to attract investors, because we don't have money. We have to open ourselves up to people who have got money. They come in. One of the things they will do, they will employ our people, and people will get paid, and they will go and buy tomato on the street. And this person selling tomato, they will go home and buy a pamela, and they will eat, and they will come back tomorrow. So we need to start opening up to investors and make ourselves investor friendly. Make laws. Of course, our laws now, well, maybe they're repealing now. It's very difficult. I'm a practicing accountant on the other side. I attend to my small street clients on the street. Of course, the tax is very high. The tax is very high in this country. And then we have ZRA, who when you owe, they don't understand. You can't sit and negotiate, and even when they give you time to pay. I'm not criticizing them. It's like they're giving
that's
you.
The fact. That's the issue. On the ground.
They are giving you stiff thing. I think if we have to grow, right, like you have said, if I change my talking, we need to look at our tax regime.
And surely you agree that small businesses in the current environment cannot grow.
And look at the what? Turnover tax. One would have thought turnover tax is going to help. If I go into issues of taxation, am I happy with the issues of taxation? No. Because if turnover tax is at 5 million, and you say, if I make 5 million, without even considering my losses, 5 million is my turnover that month. I have to pay 5%. What is 5%?
Of 5 million.
Of 5 million is 250,000 kwacha. And that money is not, you don't even have maybe the actual cash. And then ZRA comes on you and start pestering you and say, we are going to close your business. Is that the solution? And those are some of the things when Ministry of Finance opens, particularly people like you are your business here, you have to go and present your issues. Look, it's costing me so much, but I go to villages, I'm bringing you this news, but it's costing me so much. The tax should be friendly. Every one of us should be happy to pay tax. We should be happy to be visited by a taxman.
Hoping that the ministry will take those, submissions. But Economist Watson Lumba, thank you so much for joining me on Costa this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was Mr. Watson Lumba, street economist. We're discussing, obviously, the gains made by the Zambian economy in terms of focus by people, reports such as Bloomberg, the IMF, and the World Bank that Zambia's economy is poised to grow at 6.6% by the end of 2025. Equally, the gains made by the kwacha falling from about average 28 to 23 against the US dollar, the drop in the cost of petrol and diesel. The big question is, how sustainable is this? And obviously, how does this trickle down to the ordinary, into bread and butter issues? Thank you so much for watching. Good night. God bless.
Imagine having nature's secrets to health and vitality in a bottle. Introducing Lifeway Shot Health Drink. Ginger for digestion. Beetroot for stamina. Aloe vera for skin. Tamarind